here on Arizona PBS, a community service of Arizona State University.
Programs on Arizona PBS are funded in part by a gift from the estate of Maddie Butner. For more information on how to include Arizona PBS in your estate plans, call 602-496-8888.
Coming up next on Arizona PBS, Life and World.
Antiques Roadshow will not rest until we discover the treasures of the city that never sleeps, New York.
If I were your wife, I would have said, what did you bring home?
Right.
And to think my mom just wanted the frame.
It is the greatest archive I have ever had at the Roadshow.
Really?
Holy smokes.
There's more from New York next time on Antiques Roadshow.
Monday night at 7 on Arizona PBS. Support for Arizona PBS comes from viewers like you and from...
I'm Susan Linkus of the Linkus Group, a fee-based registered investment advisor specializing in financial planning, investment management, insurance strategies, and more. LinkusGroup.com, investing for life.
Support comes from Citizens Clean Elections Commission, your source for unbiased voter information. Watch an upcoming debate and vote informed this election. Visit azcleanelections.gov/debates for dates and ways to watch.
From the Cronkite Studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
I'll move it out of committee, but I will only be comfortable moving on the floor until the FBI has done more investigation than they have already.
Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination moves through committee, but not before Arizona Senator Jeff Flake pitched a last-minute deal with the Democrats.
In Phoenix, some of the candidates for mayor met with a multicultural group of voters with an eye toward unifying the city.
Plus, money from the federal land and water conservation goes toward things like Arizona Park upkeep and expansion, but it's set to expire on Sunday.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Gabriella Becerra.
And I'm Andre Sims. Thank you for joining us.
In another momentous day in the Senate Judiciary Committee, Arizona Senator Jeff Flake cast a pivotal yes vote for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, but not before pitching a last-minute deal with the Democrats to delay the final confirmation vote in the full Senate to allow for an FBI investigation into sexual assault claims against Kavanaugh. Cronkite News reporter Daniel Pearl has the latest from Washington.
Arizona Senator Jeff Flake was silent for most of the Senate Judiciary Committee's 4-hour meeting on Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh today, but when he finally spoke up, everyone listened.
This country is being ripped apart here, and we've got to make sure that we do due diligence. I think this committee has done a good job, but I do think that we can have a short pause and make sure that the FBI can investigate.
The short pause that Flake is calling for is a week, during which the FBI will look into allegations that Kavanaugh sexually assaulted girls he went to high school and college with. Democrats had been demanding a delay in the nomination until such an investigation could be done, something Republican leaders had rejected as a political stalling tactic. Flake said this morning that he planned to support Kavanaugh, but his surprise decision to approve Kavanaugh, with a caveat, was praised by Democrats on the Judiciary Committee.
I just want to thank my friend and colleague, Senator Flake, and thank you for giving us the time today to have a conversation.
The deal followed hours of side conversations between Flake and committee Democrats, while some Republicans are calling Flake's last-minute deal with Democrats a grotesque carnival. Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Kavanaugh's most ardent supporters in yesterday's hearings, said he was not angry.
So I think what Jeff is trying to do is end this the best he possibly can, to accommodate some people on the other side and to, bring the committee together if possible. So this is democracy. Am I mad at Jeff? No. Am I in a different place? Yes.
Flake and others on the committee made clear that they cannot force a probe or a delay in the vote, but they can withhold final approval for Kavanaugh if Senate leaders do not go along, and the loss of even one GOP vote would be enough to sink him. The White House issued a statement later in the day saying President Trump had ordered an FBI investigation that would be limited in scope and wrap up at the end of the week. In Washington, Daniel Pearl, Cronkite News.
The heated arguments about the treatment of sexual assault victims also have reached Arizona. Today, protesters gathered outside of Senator Flake's office in Phoenix, and Cronkite News reporter John Cardinale was there.
A somber and mostly silent demonstration by protesters standing in solidarity with Dr. Christine Blasey Ford outside of Senator Jeff Flake's office. But some of the reasons behind this particular protest are much bigger than Flake's Kavanaugh decision.
I am a victim of sexual violence on more than one occasion.
Dawn Farley wants anyone who has been sexually abused to open up.
And I want all women to stand up with us and revolt against this disgusting behavior against us. We don't deserve this. We are strong people.
Women are not the only ones who have gathered out here today. Men are also out here protesting to show their support.
As a father, I believe I should be here. A little upset that there's not more fathers or brothers here. That upsets me a little bit. We need to stick up for our wives, our daughters, our mothers, all women.
The protesters, who call themselves the Handmaids, say they have been demonstrating here in shifts for more than 24 hours straight.
For survivors all over the world, myself included, my fellow handmaids, Arizonans, Americans, and all over this globe, we see you, we hear you, and we believe you.
You don't have to carry the memories all by yourself. There's too many of us who understand your story and will love you and support you through this. Just give us a chance. Give yourself freedom.
In Phoenix, John Cardinale, Cronkite News.
The ongoing conversation on reporting sexual assault allegations and the impact on high-profile political appointments is spilling over into Arizona classrooms. Reporter Tanaya Williamson talked with a few teachers in training about what students are learning.
It is so relevant in our society today because of the Me Too movements and that kind of stuff that's going on.
Ashley Van Horn is a sophomore at the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College at Arizona State University, who believes that issues surrounding Brett Kavanaugh need to be addressed.
It's not necessarily being downplayed, but I think it should be heard more by the students, at least here, because it's not being discussed in any of our classes right now.
Sexual assault is a difficult conversation for many to have. However, some students still believe that the conversation should take place in the classroom.
Last semester after the Parkland shooting, we had a lot of conversations about how to talk to your class about tragedy and that kind of stuff. But with this, it's kind of been ignored by a lot of my classes, actually.
Kimberly Kevershan is a senior who believes that any teacher can speak to their students if they put forth the effort.
I think that no matter what your content area, no matter what the grade level, there's always ways to integrate concepts of consent and respect and relationships.
In Tempe, Tanai Williamson, Cronkite News.
Depend on Cronkite News for full coverage and analysis on what's next for the Kavanaugh nomination. We have our full multimedia reports online at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
Candidates for Phoenix mayor came together last night in a gathering to promote diversity and unity in the city. Cronkite News reporter Edgardo Lozoya got an inside scoop as to what drove this conversation.
And before you can start handling some of these complex problems that we're all talking about here, you need to be brilliant at the basics.
3 of the 4 candidates for Phoenix mayor participated in what was dubbed a conversation rather than a debate Thursday night. The gathering, put together by the Coalition One community, made up of individuals and businesses that support inclusion and equality for all Arizonans.
It really gives the candidates an opportunity to talk to really the diverse constituency that makes Phoenix great.
Organizers say the goal behind this conversation format is to hopefully motivate Phoenix residents to open up more and discuss all types of issues with the candidates.
As a part of the minority group in the city of Phoenix, I want to make sure that my next mayor can address issues that, are things that affect my family.
Issues like safer schools, homelessness, refugees in Phoenix, and education were just some of the topics covered during this conversation. With 4 different visions, the candidates for mayor of Phoenix have one common goal: a more unified Phoenix. Another important topic that was discussed was sexual harassment in the workforce. All 3 candidates agree that there should be zero tolerance for this type of behavior.
They're not doing enough. They're not.
If we sit and listen to them talk about issues that affect us, the constituents, then we're gonna be able to get the issues resolved faster.
In Phoenix, Edgardo Lozoya, Cronkite News.
Monsoon season may be finished, but the hurricanes are not. Hurricane Rosa is headed for Arizona with the threats of heavy rain and flooding coming to the valley. These photos from NASA show the storm has developed an eye wall. The National Weather Service says Arizonans can expect the storm late Monday night, bringing anywhere between 1 and 3 inches of rain. That could bring some flash flooding with it, so people are encouraged to have a plan ready just in case. Matt Kling, what else can we expect over the weekend?
And Gabriella, it depends on where in the state you are as to where you'll get this storm. Lower parts of the state, like the valley, they'll get 1, maybe 2 inches of rain, but up north and in the higher country, they might see anywhere from 3 to 4 inches of rain with winds gusting up to 40 miles per hour. A flash flood watch has been issued here for Phoenix. Of course, flash flooding is huge with any storm, so if you're driving in those low-lying areas, be careful. But until the storm, the temperatures will remain warm. Tonight, if you're heading to some high school football, 98 degrees at kickoff, 93 by halftime. For ASU football tomorrow, kickoff temperature 96 at 7 o'clock. As they take on Oregon State, the temperature will drop a little bit down into the 80s. High temperatures across the state tomorrow, triple digits in Phoenix and along the western edge of the state, but up north a little bit cooler, 81 Show Low, 73 in Flagstaff. Taking a look at your 7-day forecast. As mentioned, the storm will roll in on Monday, which will drop the temperatures into the 80s for our highs. But the good news is once the storm rolls out, the high temperatures will remain in the 80s. From the Cronkite Weather Center, I'm Matt Kling.
Arizona has received nearly $235 million over the past 50 years from what's called the Land and Water Conservation Fund. But the deadline for the fund's renewal is this Sunday.
Cronkite News reporter Jordan Daphnis is tracking the possible impact on Arizona's recreational areas.
Money from the Land and Water Conservation Fund is used for things like renovation and expansion. It even affects parks and recreational facilities inside Maricopa County. The sights, the sounds, the joy it can bring. Richard Bruner just recently moved to Arizona. For him, hiking the trails of Lost Dutchman State Park is a chance to connect with nature.
It's amazing out here. You know, if you give yourself time to look around and to feel, you can, when you get up higher up, you can hear the wind blow, and there's nobody around, there's no sounds.
The Land and Water Conservation Fund was established in 1965 to provide funding to state parks like Lost Dutchman. But you don't have to go far to see the fund at work. For example, El Dorado Park in Scottsdale.
LWCF funded to build this lake, and this lake is stocked with fish, which allows people to have a community fishing opportunity and brings another dynamic to a park.
The fund even goes towards recreational facilities like Tempe Sports Complex. And this money doesn't come from taxpayers. Earnings from offshore oil and gas are used to generate the fund. Arizona Democratic Congressman Raul Grijalva supports legislation to reauthorize the fund.
Without this bill, you would not be able to expand, enhance, or create new recreational park opportunities.
The Consideration 502 permanently reauthorization of Land and Water Conservation Fund.
Utah Republican Congressman Rob Bishop has long advocated for states to be in control of federal land. He wants more money to come from the fund for states to use.
It's not perfect in my mind, but it is good, and it's an improvement.
Grijalva and Bishop have been at odds over plans to reauthorize the fund, but earlier this month they reached a compromise. For veteran and advocate Garrett Reppenhagen, public lands are more than just a place to visit. They are an escape from the memories of war.
When I came home as an Army sniper, I came back to my mother's house in Green Mountain Falls, Colorado, and her backyard is Pikes Peak and Pike National Forest. And almost instinctively, I grabbed a sleeping bag, a water purifier, and a fishing pole, and left to the woods. And I think that experience saved my life.
Reppenhagen and a colleague stopped in Phoenix as part of a nationwide tour earlier this year, advocating for the fund to be permanently renewed. The bill to reauthorize the Land and Water Conservation Fund has bipartisan support from 232 House members. It still has to pass through the House and Senate before Sunday. Even if it expires, Arizona will still receive $2 million for outdoor recreation and conservation projects. In the Broadcast Center, Jordan Daphnis, Cronkite News.
When you visit, say, the Grand Canyon, roads, bridges, and water pipelines are just a few of the things needed to make sure your visit is pleasant. And sometimes they need repairs. As Cronkite News reporter Jordan Evans reports, U.S. Secretary of Interior Ryan Zinke visited the park this weekend to see some of those things that need not to be fixed just here in Arizona, but in parks across the nation.
The Grand Canyon is one of the nation's most popular parks for tourism. From the scenic views to the lodging to the guided tours, the Grand Canyon generated about $900 million in economic benefits just in 2016. But now, national parks across the nation are needing about $12 billion for infrastructure and facilities.
With 330 million visitors to our park system, 7 million visitors here, our parks are being loved to death.
Secretary of Interior Ryan Zinke took a bus along the south rim of the Grand Canyon Saturday. He stopped to see some of the areas that need to be fixed. Those include historic cabins and a water treatment plant, as well as the Trans-Canyon Pipeline.
It's time for America to step up and let's rebuild our parks to make sure we have the same experience for the next generation.
Here at the Grand Canyon, this park needs about $330 million to fix maintenance that's been deferred. That's only a small part of the nearly $12 billion needed to repair all of the national parks.
Deferred maintenance is maintenance that hasn't happened to buildings, assets, roads, utilities that needs to be done, but because of various reasons, whether it's budget or time, hasn't happened, and it leaves buildings and assets in poor condition. The opportunity we have today is funding that may come our way and be able to raise the profile of that topic and fund those projects that need to be done.
That funding could come through competing plans in Congress, which would provide billions of dollars to the National Park Service to make repairs. National parks in Arizona alone need $531 million. California needs the most at $1.8 billion. So one way to help curb that demand is for the community to get involved.
I heard that number and I was shocked. I was like, wow, like this is why volunteers come. This is a perfect opportunity. We need volunteers to come out and do things like this and to help lower our backlog maintenance. And it's things like painting a building or fixing a fence, just little things like that that anyone can come out and do.
But volunteers are only part of the solution. Some projects need paid contractors and engineers. So one plan currently in the U.S. Senate would develop federal lands for all sources of energy. That has some people concerned about the negative environmental impacts and accusing Zinke of supporting corporate interests.
Most of what he's done is undermining, public lands and being on the side of oil and, extractive industries. So I think, there needs to be more done to be protecting these lands and not to be selling them out for profit.
But Zinke disagrees. Money coming from renewable or non-renewable energy developed on federal lands would go a long way to taking care of long overdue maintenance projects.
The underlying proposition is this: if you're going to create wealth and energy on public lands, then I think you also have an obligation to fund our public lands in perpetuity.
A new bill is aiming to provide research funding for a disease that rises from the soil. Cronkite News reporter Cammie Clark explains how the bill will help Arizona take the next steps in finding a cure for valley fever.
The new legislation would give $40 million to research for valley fever vaccine. But the vaccine may come for your pet before it is available to you. Congressman David Schweikert says that the Forward Act of 2018 could advance research in valley fever if passes Congress.
It creates a focus and resources to actually take on valley fever for those of us here in Arizona. But the second thing, it also has this really interesting technology of how we capture data to actually head towards building that vaccine and new drug treatments.
Schweikert says Arizona and other states could receive $40 million in matching funds over 5 years for research into fungal diseases like valley fever. Another $5 million could be authorized to establish a blockchain pilot program to enable clinical research for valley fever.
It's this orphan disease that much of the rest of the country has never heard of, doesn't care about. And one of my personal passions is I am going to, through at least my position in Congress, find the resources to fund the research to see that we get a cure.
But canines will likely get a vaccine before humans.
Well, we are trying to get this vaccine approved through the USDA to help dogs.
And I think there won't be a human vaccine until we accomplish that.
Schweikert says he and other members of Congress are still fighting to fund the valley fever battle.
Part of the goal of doing that was what resources were necessary, how do we make sure that the National Science Foundation and others have valley fever as one of their priorities, and then how do we use the legislative process to get the resources and access to the information to head towards that cure.
Schweikert hopes to present the bill to the House by the end of this year. Experts estimate a vaccine for dogs can come as soon as 4 years, but there is no set time frame for people. In the Broadcast Center, Cammie Clark, Cronkite News.
The border town of Naco, Arizona is once again dealing with a burst pipeline that's spilling 300 gallons of sewage every minute coming from the Mexican side. Now officials are looking for permanent solutions under difficult circumstances. Cronkite News reporter Brittany Watson went to Naco and shows us what they're dealing with.
Thousands of gallons of raw sewage are spilling into Naco, Arizona from Naco, Sonora every day, leaving residents wondering when this pipeline will be getting repaired and what health effects they may be facing because of it.
We have every right to defend our lives. You guys don't live here. We live here.
Hepatitis A, hepatitis B, tetanus. We also worry about viruses and parasites as well.
Facts in the scope of the problem. Cochise County health officials hosted a town hall last Friday in Naco for residents, allowing them to express their frustrations about the leaking pipeline while discussing the plans to fix it. Authorities estimate repairs will last around 8 weeks.
So that's kind of an estimated time that we've been given. We don't know which agency is going to be responsible for that at all.
The leak started September 9th, but Naco has been dealing with spilled sewage for years. This latest incident triggered after a breach in a conveyance line used to transfer sewage from both sides of the border.
I'd like to tell the council for them to get together and do what's got to be done on the American side, and let them worry about the Mexican side.
County officials say there is a plan in place for repairs, but it comes with challenges.
We're kind of on standby right now because when that repair takes place, we're anticipating another flow to come across because they have to flush out the system.
Naco resident David Lloyd believes the answer to preventing this problem from happening again is to improve relations between the governments across the border.
Naco, Sonora and Naco, Arizona are very much the same community in some ways. Extraordinarily, and we should take advantage of that, and we should use it positively.
In Naco, Brittany Watson, Cronkite News.
The Air Force is currently experiencing a pilot shortage. Here in Arizona, Luke Air Force Base is feeling the effects.
Cronkite News reporter Holly Bernstein tells us how various initiatives across the state are playing their part to combat the shortage.
Luke Air Force Base is primarily a training base. That means having fewer pilots has a serious impact in terms of being ready for potential missions. Currently, there are only 58 instructor pilots filling out 84 available spots for F-16 fighter jets. For the F-35 fighter jets, they only have 85 out of 101 instructor pilots. This has led to high school students coming from all parts of the state to train in different areas impacted by this pilot shortage. Every day at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, pilots are training to fly F-16 and F-35 fighter jets.
And just getting up in the air, that feeling that you get in your stomach.
South Mountain High School senior Jaja Obasi says he'd like to follow in their footsteps one day.
And then just watching as everything gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
For now, he's taking part in his high school's aerospace program. But although Obasi and other student pilots are hoping their aviation careers take off, the Air Force is experiencing a pilot shortage. At Luke Air Force Base, which is mainly a training base, the primary concern is staffing instructor pilots. Air Force officials say that after 8 to 10 years, pilots in training often leave, looking for better ways to balance their work and family life.
Right now, we don't have enough of certain types of pilots to actually account for all the jobs that we need to do in the Air Force. So those can be anything from here in the front line of actually flying aircraft all the way to kind of the staff jobs that require pilot knowledge as a background to be able to do the job.
He also says another cause of the pilot shortage is aircraft availability, with maintenance playing a big role. That's because the number of pilots that can train depends on the number of aircraft available. 2 hours away, in Tucson, Arizona, high school students are learning those skills. Students involved in the Southern Arizona Teen Aviation Program are involved in all parts of building an airplane, including this fuselage.
Anybody who's going to fly, if they work on this airplane, will learn all about the intricacies of what makes an airplane go. I mean, I think we're trying to give the kids an opportunity to get their hands on an airplane, see what an airplane's like, fly in an airplane, work with an airplane, build an airplane.
Andriotta says one way the Air Force is looking to produce more pilots is by increasing efficiency in training.
Where we can decrease the course length, but not decrease the quality of the product that we're sending out there. So that's how we produce more.
Obasi says he loves aviation because there's lots of experiences you can have within the field.
We need more pilots. It's definitely something that can't be overlooked. It's a fun field.
By 2024, Air Force officials say their goal is to have all positions manned at 95%. For fighter pilot positions, the year they are looking at is 2029. Holly Bernstein, Cronkite News.
Hot Shots are known as an elite team of firefighters, but now an upstart league hopes the name will also evoke a new football team. The Arizona Hot Shots of the Alliance of American Football League begin to play next year, and Cronkite News reporter Matt Lively spoke to team executives today.
19 Granite Mountain hotshots lost their lives in the Yarnell Hill fire southwest of Prescott in 2013, the most firefighters to die in a single incident in the United States since 9/11. So the name Hotshots has special meaning for Arizonans. Carl Gerke, a planning specialist with the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management, thinks giving the name Hotshots to a football team can help shine a spotlight on those who risk their lives fighting wildfires.
I mean, it would be cool if they, offered actual shot crews to come down and, some of the sidelines or do something like that, participate in some of the activities. That would be neat. It's good that they named them after some firefighters, remember the Yarnell 19, things like that.
Team President Scott Burbaker said that while no partnership exists yet between the hotshot firefighters and the football team, he hopes to put something together soon.
And these guys are kind of the Navy SEALs of firefighters. So over the coming months, we will engage with them and their support groups, et cetera, and find ways, the best and most appropriate ways to partner with them.
The Alliance of American Football owns all 8 teams in the league. The AAF developed and tested each team's name before informing team executives over the last 2 weeks. Arizona General Manager Phil Savage said he thinks naming the Arizona franchise the Hotshots is a great way to honor the firefighting heroes.
Bravery, courage, skill, teamwork. I mean, they're all things that carry over from what the real hotshots do versus those that are football hotshots. What an honor and what a tribute it is to these 100 elite units of firefighters across the country and then obviously here in Arizona.
Cronkite News spoke with fire department chiefs in both Prescott and Yarnell. Prescott Chief Dennis Light said they weren't consulted about the team name, but he said as long as they use hotshots in an honoring and respectful way, he won't take any offense. Yarnell Chief Ben Palm told us that he hopes the team isn't attempting to make profits off the hotshots, but does not directly oppose the name. In the broadcast center, Matt Lively, Cronkite News.
Support for Arizona PBS comes from viewers like you and from
Deanne Griebel, now with Moores & Cabot Investments, serving investors since 1890, proudly supports quality programming on 8 Arizona PBS, 480-725-9602.
Feel the beat of today's Cuba with Raul Malo of the Mavericks as he explores his own musical roots. For a fantastic concert in Cuba, look for the Havana Time Machine. A great performance's Voces special.
Tonight at 8 on Arizona PBS. Explore new ideas and new worlds here on Arizona PBS, a community service of Arizona State University.
Arizona PBS deeply appreciates every gift we receive, and we are proud to honor our Executive Society. These supporters believe in the mission of public television and are making a real impact in our community. If you would like to join the Executive Society, please call the number below or log on to AZ